Parents never gave me $1 for anything. They paid for my school and food, but that's it. Never gave me $1. That's terrifying when you owe a loan shark money. Okay, so we're going to talk about work of Les Femi, who wrote the book Open Focus Brain, The Open Focus Brain with Jim Robbins. And so Les Femi found and realized and recognized that any intervention that helps to change somebody has in some part, if not most part, in changing how you pay attention. Not what you're paying attention to, but how you're paying attention, and has everything to do with regulating the nervous system in the face of the triggering problem or stimulus. So what does that mean? Let me talk about Les Femi for a second and talk about what he found. And he didn't find this, he just was able to measure it and put it together in a beautiful package. But he did find something that I'm going to get into. So he was very curious about synchronization because he was measuring monkeys and their brain waves. And he was noticing that monkeys' brain waves, when they were learning at their best, they had this flood of synchronization. And one day he was trying to figure out how to do this on himself, like synchronize his brain. And he was looking to create alpha waves. Now, alpha waves are the lower arousal states of the neocortex. It's like, imagine the neocortex that's idle, meaning the thinking brain. So imagine the brain stem, the primitive part of the brain, are very low frequencies called delta. And then you have what's called theta waves. This is connected to like the limbic system, dreams and emotion, right? And then you have the neocortex that has beta waves, which is processing the external world. Anytime you're learning about something new, you're going to have beta waves. Every time you're concerned about something new out there, you're going to have beta waves. Anytime you're trying to figure something out, beta waves. Right now, you're in beta waves. A lot of beta waves, right? When the brain just wakes up and you're coming out of sleep, but there's nothing to process, and you're very comfortable and you feel safe, and there's a kind of a oneness with the world. You're not only in alpha waves, but if you're in this oneness, you're in this kind of synchronous alpha. So he made his own neurofeedback machine, and he was attempting to create an amplitude of alpha waves. And I'll get into the importance of that in a moment. So he was trying everything. He was trying music, strobe lights, imagery, progressive relaxation techniques. Nothing was working. I mean, when you close your eyes, you're going to have more alpha waves because closing your eyes inhibit beta waves. But he wasn't increasing the amplitude, and he started wondering if it's even possible to increase alpha waves. So after about the 13th day, he gave up. As chance would have it, luckily, he still had the electrodes on his head when he gave up. And he got the signal, bing, that his alpha waves increased. That's interesting. Giving up created these alpha waves. Sound familiar? I just let it go and it all happened. I stopped trying so hard. I got out of my way, right? And he was doing research with students, trying to get them to create alpha waves. And of course, he's not going to tell the students, okay, just give up, So he's trying to get them to give up, but try some kind of intervention to get more alpha waves going. And he was trying this and that, and he was trying again, ocean sounds and all these different types of techniques. And they weren't working. And he came across a hypnosis script. And in the script, it said, can you imagine the space between your eyes? 4 times the amplitude. I actually have a video I can show you to demonstrate it because I tested it myself. And the amplitude went through the roof just by becoming aware of space. Actually, that happened with himself. When he did it, his amplitude increased 4 times the baseline he had. With the students, he just noticed a dramatic increase in amplitude of alpha waves. And he kept doing that. But what he realized was not only was he increasing alpha waves, but he noticed that all the parts of the brain were synchronized in this increase in alpha waves. So he basically was putting the brain into this cohesive, coherent, synchronized machine, working together as one. The irony about this is when that happens, there is no you and other, because the asynchrony in the brain, the beta waves, is its attempt to notice what's outside as other. So it's the interference pattern of the outside world and your brain that creates a you and something else. This is why the more familiar you are with someone or an object or a thing doing it, the less beta waves you have, because it's now you. It's like one with you, and there's no separation. So the beta waves are basically a processing element that happens when you're trying to make sense of your world. What he realized is so profound. So he talks about the 4 attention styles. Now, of course, neuroscientists have been studying this, left and right hemisphere attention styles and stuff like this, but this is how he puts it. There are 4 types of attention styles. One is objective. We need that if we're doing open heart surgery. If we see a crocodile, we want to be separate from something and look at it and not be one with it. We want to be objective. Too much of that, you become a sociopath. That's what a sociopath is, or a psychopath. They're so separated from everything outside themselves that it's other. There's a book called The Master and Its Emissary. It's written about left and right hemisphere, and the left hemisphere is supposed to be the emissary that goes out and figures it out, like the world, and then integrates it. But the master is the right hemisphere, body, brain, and the bigger self. And when the left hemisphere starts running amok, it starts to control everything, and yet it's separate from everything. And it starts to control our experiences, and yet it's separate from life and ourselves even. So there's objective focus, and there's immersed. I'm one with something outside myself. I've merged with it. There's narrowed, looking at you right now, one of the boxes, and there's diffused. And so if you look at this through the eyes of a conductor in an orchestra, I can be objective and diffused. You can see the whole orchestra. Wow, they're doing pretty well. And then I can start to become one with them and immerse myself in this diffusion, yes? And then the trombone player seems to be doing something strange. So now I get objective and narrowed. And now I work with them a little bit. And then I go into a balance with them. One with them. And then I've now immersed and narrowed. And then I can now diffuse and immerse. Or objectify and diffuse. Make sense? And I can diffuse. And so these are attention styles that the brain needs to be able to go in and out of. And you can be in 2 of them at the same time that seem contradictory. For example, I can be focusing, but also I can keep that narrowed focus, stay narrowed, but also add periphery. And diffused. And as soon as I do that, notice what my nervous system does. It just kind of relaxes a little bit. And then I can kind of get a sense that we're one and connect. And at the same time get a sense that we're separate. And I can go in and out of these attention styles. And that's what the nervous system was designed to do until something happened. So think about a lion in Serengeti, right? Tail is flapping. And a bunch of zebras run by the lion. And the zebras are painted this way. Why? Because when you have a whole bunch of zebras with all these stripes, doesn't that create a diffused sense of self? Well, that line is forced into diffusion just by seeing these zebras. So 1 minute it's one with everything. So it's immersed and diffused. I'm one with everything and I'm everything. Then I see a bunch of patterns of this big pattern. So I'm curious, but I'm still diffused. So I'm objective, what's that? But I'm still diffused. And all of a sudden, one of those zebras are limping or making a sound that's different from the herd. And something sticks out and it forces my eyes and my brain and my left hemisphere into action to go into predaceous mentality, objective and narrowed. I lock on to that zebra and everything else becomes a blur and I start chasing it. Because as soon as I go objective and narrowed, my heartbeat starts to speed up, my tension, my muscles increase, skin conductance increases, the skin sweat glands increase, temperature gets colder in the fingertips as the blood goes to the legs or arms for fighting or running. My frontal lobes start to shut down because I'm interested in reaction, real fast movements rather than thinking cognitive thoughts, right? Slow thoughts. I'm into fast movements and thoughts and behaviors, right? And I'm there. In fact, I forgot which book talked about this. It's a great example of researchers were studying zebras and they would paint them with the red paint that, that would probably dissolve in a day. But as soon as they painted the zebras, they would disappear because you're forcing that lion to see that one zebra because it's got red on it. And so it stands out in this giant Gestalt picture. within this giant diffuse picture. It forces the brain to go into narrowed objective focus. So that would be an example of how as soon as you go into objective narrow focus, it tells the body and brain there's a concern, either something you want for survival or something you need to run away from because of survival. And that's why as soon as you do it, stress hormones increase. So I'm going to show you that right now, just so you all get a feeling of that. I'll just show you how easy it is. I want you to focus on something maybe above your computer or your phone, whatever you're looking at, and look at a spot. And just focus all your attention on the spot. Don't think of anything else. Just narrow your focus on that spot. Notice as soon as you do that, you feel tension happening in your body. You start holding your breath a little bit. Good. Now, diffuse your attention. Not only focus on the spot, focus on the space behind your body and the space around the spot. Start focusing and feeling the space between you and the spot. So now you're kind of immersing and diffusing. Notice what happens to your body. See that shift? Because your brain knew that as soon as you went into narrowed objective focus, it needed stress hormones. So now here is the human condition in a nutshell and its problems as far as inside. First and foremost, we are conditioned into narrowed objective focus, meaning we are creating stress hormones for focusing when we didn't need to. Example, Sharif, what's this called? Pay attention, Sharif. That's a pen. Very good. What color is it? Good. What's this called? So we're labeling left hemisphere, names, we're identifying, and we're narrowing our focus. And what happened if that child just looks away for a second? Do you think that child looking away is not focusing? As soon as you focus on something that narrowed and that objective, you create stress hormones, but you don't need those stress hormones to be able to focus on something narrow and objective, because you can still stay in diffused and immersed at the same time. You can just make that a little bit more important than the diffused awareness. It doesn't have to be all-encompassing. It can be both happening at the same time. And so the first thing he mentions is that we are conditioned out of the natural states of flow, the natural state of being in alpha waves, being calm and comfortable, healing. Because as soon as we go into beta waves, the brain stops digesting food, or this beginning of the fight-flight response. And so the brain and body spend more energy now on muscle tension, on heartbeat, on respiration than it does on digestion or your immune system. This is why people who work on energy and hypnosis and releasing emotions, suddenly certain diseases go away, or IBS goes away, things like this. Skin rashes, even acne. When we're at a cortisol overload, because with the narrowed objective focus, it creates more oils in the skin, gets blocked in the pores. Autoimmune, rashes and skin problems. Stomach IBS, because the body's not digesting and the nervous system is creating problems. And because we stay in this objective focus, we get conditioned into it, we're continuously, unconsciously contracting our muscles through what's sympathetic wiring in the brain. I mean, sympathetic is that fight-flight. So it's tightening the muscles, and people don't even know their muscles are tight. If you hook someone up to like electromyography, which measures muscle tension and the signal that the brain is supplying to that muscle, you'll see that most people think they're relaxed, and they're not at all. Their muscles have tension. They're just unconscious. They relax as much as they can, and they have no awareness that their body is stuck. So you see how that can create back problems, restricts blood flow, inflammation from all that tension headaches, even migraines. And this is because we get so used to it, we don't even know we're in it. Now you combine that with a traumatic event or just a significant emotional event, and we lock on to that significant emotional event, the criticism, the bully, the parents' divorce or fighting, whatever, and we lock on, that's narrowed focus stress hormones. If we don't come back down, we stay there. And one of the reasons we stay there is because we don't process it fully, release the emotion, and come back down. So now, because we haven't released the emotion, and the emotion was too intense at that moment, we can't be present in a body that has those emotions. Fair enough? So if you're in a body and you have this emotion, guess where the tiger now lives or the lion now lives? problem outside lives inside because our body was responding to the problem. Now we have that lion inside. We have that divorce, that criticism, that bullying, that humiliation inside our bodies, and we don't want to feel them because we haven't learned from it, so we're afraid of it. So now we have what? Objective, narrowed focus in our own body. So we have running from the tiger now in our own body. And we start to get physically uncomfortable. That's where you see kids get uncomfortable. And children have a tendency to do there's like 3 or 4 patterns based on their personality, predisposition, and physiology, right? One, they have uncomfortable emotions in their body and they haven't transmuted it, meaning they haven't merged with the emotions, diffused and merged, discharged and got comfortable, now knowing how to be in the world with that problem. Now the problem's still in their nervous system. It's in their brain as a kind of a warning, and it's in their nervous system as far as, the autonomic nervous system as far as a fight-flight energy called anxiety. We call it boredom, right? Or restlessness. So when a child now is feeling that, they have a tendency to do one of 3 patterns. And some have 2 patterns within them, depending on their predisposition. And you'll see where you lie in this kind of equation. We either dissociate, because if I don't want to be in my body, right? So I have to go somewhere. Where do I go? Me used to just dissociate into nothingness. Didn't know where I was, called it the astral plane. Just completely gone. Mr. Tabanella, did you hear what I just said? What? Huh? What? Oh yeah, no, I got distracted. Or they dissociate into creativity. They actually go somewhere. That's why pain, in my opinion, pain and suffering associated with the artist is because of this idea. Because oftentimes pain in our body forces us to go somewhere not in our body, and we don't like what's out there. So we go up into some imaginary world of music or art, and we did it to survive. So of course I'm going to want it to be really rich and filled with color because it helps me escape out of my body. Does that make sense? So that's the escape mechanism. This is exactly what we do in hypnosis when someone's doing a surgery, and so we don't want them to feel it. Let's say they're allergic to anesthesia. Any surgery, save the stomach because of the amount of pain wiring and sensitivity. The surgery, if you take the person, if they're suggestible enough and hypnotizable enough, you can take them out of their body and put them skiing with all 5 senses. And the more rich and enveloped and engrossed they are in that experience, right, the less pain they would feel. Why? Because they're leaving their body's experience and having experience up here and feeling that as their dominant experience. And this is shown in a hospital where they were working with burn victims, these children that were dressing their bandages, and it's really, really painful when you change bandages, right? And they had 2 groups. They had one group play a video game, and the other kids were actually playing a virtual video game. They were so, really immersive experience with shooting the snowman or whatever with the snowball gun, right? And they found that those that were in the virtual reality game had so much less pain awareness than those just playing the video game, because they were able to leave their body and go into their imaginary world and immersed in this world. Does that make sense? So that was an escape out. So children do this naturally. They go into a creative world or dissociate so they don't have to feel the emotional pain in their body. The second group usually is a stimulation seeker. So those are the kids in school that can't leave. At the school I teach, we call more like fizzies, physical. They're so attached to the body, they can't leave their body. So they need something stimulating. They need to throw a pencil at somebody. They're not going to be interested in that teacher unless it's something really exciting, like them walking back into a class with toilet paper on their shoe or something, and they laugh. Or they start looking for adrenaline producing behaviors, like risky behaviors, because it at least makes them feel alive. It gives them that power when they first had that fight-flight experience they never processed, and it just helps them to get excited and feel alive and not feel these subtle emotions in their body that they didn't want to feel. Then you have that group too, and then you have the third group that use this energy to completely be enveloped in what they're doing and become very competitive. So they'll become the really good academics, and they become the ones who are going to be the best at whatever they're doing. So they're not escaping, they're not distracting, looking for stuff. They're going to make this They're going to use the energy to move them into competition and success. Now, does that mean that everyone who's competitive and successful has unprocessed emotions? No, I'm not saying that at all. Does that mean everyone who's creative has unprocessed emotions or escaping from? No. Does that mean anyone who's interested in something that's stimulating is filled with unprocessed emotions? No, not at all. But when we're forced into it, then that's when somebody is trapped in stimulation in order to be comfortable, trapped in creativity to be comfortable, or trapped in dissociation to be comfortable, or trapped in competition and winning to be comfortable. Does that make sense? So that's why you can get there naturally. This is why some artists needed all that pain to become artists, and some artists just went there anyway, without the pain. It's just going to be more powerful if you're in pain, because you're more likely to want to be in another world when you're in pain. So it's a better impetus to get you there, more powerful to get you into creativity, into stimulation, or being competitive. But you see this happen all the time, right? The artist hurts himself, the over-competitive person retires and says, what the hell was my life about? Why am I not happy? And why am I needing to drink more every day because I still feel restless or uncomfortable in my body? And the person who dissociated walks around saying, what was I doing for 20 years? I kept saying I was going to do this, that, and this, and I haven't done anything. So this is what happens when we have narrowed objective focus, not only in the outside world, but we didn't clean it up in our inner world. So now the narrowed objective focus is inside, and in an attempt, we escape, we compete, we seek stimulation, and then we self-medicate. And that's where the coping comes in. And we start self-medicating. I need more stuff to pay attention, get me out of my body. I need it. Nothing's stimulating enough. This book isn't stimulating. This teacher isn't stimulating enough. I need something to get me out of my body, or I'm not going to be able to focus. Ooh, Adderall. Ooh, coffee, Red Bull, cigarettes, stimulant. Oh, good. Now I can focus. Now I can get out of my body and be somewhere interesting, so I don't have to feel. Play music or play radio, podcast at night, so I can be distracted, because as I start to relax, what happens? You go from beta waves to alpha waves. When I go to alpha waves, I'm about to hit theta waves. Guess what's in the theta waves? The emotions, where the body lives. I don't want to be that relaxed. I'd rather keep my focus on something until I get so tired I pass out, because I don't want to feel that transition of being with my body at night and watching it shut down because I've been running from it all day with stimulants, and then needing to come down or continue to distract with the radio or something. And so then I have my wine to bring me down, or I even get addicted to exercise. It creates endogenous endorphins and a depressant, response, where you relax after the fact. And then I need more of that. And this is what creates these patterns. So what do you do about it? Well, the first thing to do is to recognize we're habituated into it, and by responding to it, we make things worse. By being even more narrowed focused and trying to fix the problem, ruminate about the problem, or perseverate around the problem, or run from the problem, it gets worse. Inside, not outside, inside. Right? It gets worse. By merging with the discomfort, we diffuse it and merge back into what we've separated from. And when we do that, we become one with the environment and everything in it. So, if we first look at this as a model of anything outside that triggers an emotional response inside, not a fight flight in that moment that I can use. I can beat them up or run. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about hurt. I'm talking about sadness. I'm talking about frustration. I'm talking about disappointment, right? If we become afraid of our body's response to the situation, we naturally go narrowed, we feel tension, we push it down, and then we have to do something with it. Some people obsessive thoughts. Some people take obsessive action and be really annoying and aggressive and assertive over and over again. Some people just worry a lot. Some people will start scratching or picking their nails. Some people will just pace. Some people will complain in an attempt to run away from their sensation. Once you understand that that's what's happening, and you merge and diffuse that energy rather than be afraid of it. I mean, the Hindus knew, the Buddhists knew, but this mindfulness. It's just that when when I've worked with people who had no results from doing mindfulness stuff, I believe now, and I find now, because after they see it through this lens, it's usually helpful, is the reason is they're trying to be mindful. For those of you who don't know, that all mindfulness is the objective awareness, the observation of something without judgment for what it is, that it is, and we're not trying to change it and just watching it. Well, if something's coming up in my nervous system called fear or shame, and it's intense, and I'm trying to watch it, but I'm watching it from my left narrowed objective hemisphere inside myself, it's very hard to merge with it and watch it. That's the whole point of watching it and being comfortable without judgment. I want to merge with it, but without diffusing my awareness first, it's very difficult to merge. It's like merging with a crocodile, you know? It's like, that's the thing I've been running from. You want me to merge with it? You want me to be mindful, accept it? That's the thing I've been running from my whole life. And so the metaphor I like to use, there are a couple of metaphors, analogies that I find work well, which is, imagine the observing you, right, is really just like the sky. It's just a freedom of data, freedom of emotions, right? And that sky, which goes out into infinity, experiences a comet running through it. Meaning for a moment, it forgets it's a sky and thinks it's a body needing to survive and its emotions needing to survive. And all of this sky energy went right into the comet and spent all its time being afraid, objectifying, and narrowing its focus. Wouldn't that sky have a problem, as limitless as it is? It'd be trying to get away from the comet. It'd be trying to put its awareness somewhere else so it wouldn't feel the comet. It would be trying to find ways to get rid of, go to hypnotherapists, NLP people, psychologists, family therapists to try and get rid of that comet. That's what I hear a lot in anxiety. I can't get rid of this anxiety. Who said we have to get rid of it? That's the problem. That's the first problem in anxiety, thinking you have to get rid of it rather than integrating. As Kierkegaard said, there's a certain anxiety that's a good anxiety. It's an existential anxiety about your choices and your possibilities in life. And the fact that you can have choice, and then with that comes responsibility, and there's life and there's death, and what's that about? That's a natural anxiety I should embrace as part of life, not try to get rid of. It's the other stuff that's suppressed that's coming up that needs to also be integrated, not ran from. So imagine someone goes up to the sky and says, "Hey sky, what are you doing?" "Oh, this comet." I know there's a comet, and we're not denying the comet, but I want you to become aware of the space around the comet. Go further out. "Oh, okay, that's right. I can experience that too." "How about the space on the other side of the comet?" "Wow, yeah, I can experience that too. While the comet's there, I guess." Not trying to get rid of the comet? No. Notice there's space in front of the comet. Okay, and notice there's space behind the comet. Diffusing. Now notice there's space inside the comet and through the comet. And the comet goes back into its rightful place relative to all that is. You don't get rid of it, but in a sense you do get rid of it. Because anyone who's good at math can tell you that 15 million miles of comet, or 15 million tons, or 15 million ounces, or right, divided into infinity is 0. So by being aware of its rightful place, not only does the comet have no effect on the sky, it literally disappears, literally, mathematically, because of the enormity of space. It's when space itself did its own narrowed objective focus on the comet that created the problem. When we are aware of that, and we start spreading our awareness through it, into it, what happens is all that stuff that we're terrified of starts coming to the surface. Anyone who knows acupuncture knows that that's what acupuncture is designed to do, is move the energy that's been blocked. Chi, or ki, depending on where you're from, is moving energy that's been blocked. How do you move energy? By welcoming it, not having narrowed objective focus, because those are stressful modes. By expanding, letting it be, and expanding. Now, some people say, "I know, but that's hard." If it's hard, you're not doing it right. Because one of the approaches that Les Femi talked about was when you approach this, even the approach, can you allow it to be effortless? And here's the other analogy. Well, that was a metaphor. This is more of an analogy of stretching a muscle. Right? When you go to stretch a muscle, if someone's pushing you or you're pushing it and it's too hard, you're not stretching the muscle, you're hurting yourself. Make sense? If you have no awareness and you're in space and you don't even feel the pressure of the muscle, are you really changing anything? No. So that muscle is always going to have its own reality, right? But there's a place when you're stretching a muscle where you go right to the edge of it and it stops. And if you went any further, you feel pressure building. If you pull off just a tiny bit and hang out there and start to diffuse your attention and start to put your awareness in it, merging with it, what we say breathe into it, like start to become part of it. What happens? Even after 10 minutes, it opens, doesn't it? But here's the rub. If you went to a yoga class for the first time and you saw someone's nose hitting your shin, and you can even touch your knees, forget about your toes, would it feel impossible to attempt to touch the floor, feeling all this pain in your hamstring, thinking like, I'm gonna get there? I'm supposed to sit with this? And you can either force it and be too painful and not want to come back, be miserable, or give up on it and not want to get through it. And it's that sweet, patient integration of what has been separated from that allows us to move, right? One can argue that we touch the floor eventually, not because we stretched our muscle, but we touched the floor because we brought our consciousness into the muscle. So the muscle had to listen to consciousness. Because we went into where the muscle was, where we weren't at one point. And as we go into it and breathe into it, the muscle listens to us, because when we become something, we can affect it. If we're not something, how are we going to affect something we're objective about, separated from? And this is why animals don't need to stretch, because they wake up in their body. They wake up stretching. They're in their body. Their consciousness is in every cell of their body. They haven't dissociated from their bodies. So they're stretching. Well, the same exact thing happens with emotions. We run from our bodies, just like we run from our legs from stretching because we're not in our bodies. We run from the emotional response our bodies have about life. And so we dissociate and live up here. And like I said, dissociation, no, not enough beta waves, to too many beta waves, anxiety. That's what ADD is in a neurofeedback point of view. It's not enough beta waves in the frontal lobes. The frontal lobes are asleep, basically. And those frontal lobes deal with focusing and cognition in the external world and dealing with the external world, not the back of the brain that's perceiving the world. If you look at the emotion just like the animal stretching, just like stretching a muscle, and you're going into it the same way, you're expanding and you're hitting it at the edges, rather than trying to run and change someone to change this. This will eventually dissolve and you'll know what to do with that, because then you'll be dealing with something out there rather than something in you. And again, that's not to devalue what's happening out there. We're talking about our body's response to what's happening out there. The fight-flight response, that if it can't run or fight, it needs to discharge and come up with a new way of doing something, even energetically. And I'll get into the woo-woo part of this at the end of this talk, because that's when I realized that's what happened when I had a miracle happen that got me involved in all of this. So do you need to have a mental understanding about what's happening? Now, if you mean that you have to know the root, no, right? Because the energy is the root. And if you're really releasing the energy, you'll know the root. You'll have pictures of that association to that trapped energy or emotion. Sometimes it's just intense energy from narrowed objective focus over time, and you're just releasing the stored up energy that just comes from practicing narrow focus. Like right now I'm cooking and I have all this tension. I'm not worried about anything. I don't have any trauma around cooking. Why am I not part of the dish? Why am I not in the kitchen? Because of practice and habit, right? And that's why sometimes hypnosis, biofeedback, or acupuncture works miracles, and it's just removing energy. And that being said, it's more important to reframe, I think, what I'm saying. That's why I teach this stuff, is because I find the reframe in the psycho-ed is important, because it helps you to be okay with the discharge. Because if someone gives you a needle and discharges energy, but you're still afraid of energy in general, psychologically, and you don't want it and you're separating from it, then you're going to have a storage again in a couple of months. You have to go back for a couple of weeks, right? You're going to keep having this storage. If it's a specific emotional charge energetically that's trapped, you might want to look at what's happening that's associated to it and reframe it will help it, and see the emotion as actually processing and accepting something you couldn't deal with and learn from. That's why I like a fusion of this stuff and EFT and NLP and timeline therapy, or MER, which I'm certified in, and brain spotting. And I like fusion because they're all doing the same thing in a different way. But the open focus is the baseline in which to transmute the charge that will give you the insight, or allow insight, or won't even need insight because you've accepted something in the nervous system. And usually when the nervous system is calm around something, it can now deal with it. Like, think about, here's a perfect example of this. Think about boxing gyms, right? A good boxing gym, when you walk in, they'll take one of those pool noodles and they'll do this to you. Why? Because you can't focus on something coming at you and slip it if you're going to do this, right? If you're objective and narrowed and you're afraid of your body's response to it, and you're objective and narrowed around that. So you learn to be in flow until the body's so comfortable with this thing coming at you that then you can actually deal with the thing externally. Still a problem, but now you're dealing with it rather than emotionally responding to it, because you discharged all that fight, flight, wondering what to do with it. And then they do a little faster, and they maybe hit your nose. Not so bad, and a little harder, not so bad, but now you're getting comfortable. And then by the time a glove is on, they hit your nose, okay, getting comfortable, and then incrementally building so you don't have this freeze up of fight, flight chemistry, narrowed objective focus, and freeze up. So you start to integrate everything as merging with it, breathing through it, getting relaxed around it. So you're still dealing with the problem, but now you're dealing externally with the problem rather than your body's response to the problem. And this happens in every martial arts. The more open, focused you are, more relaxed you are, the more comfortable you are, the better you're going to be, faster you're going to hit, the harder you're going to hit, the smarter you're going to hit. That doesn't mean that in fight, flight, narrow focus, you're not going to be explosive. But if you're not one of those guys, those wrestlers from the UFC back in the day, these guys are so explosive. Yeah, they only had like 20 seconds to destroy you, and they had all that focus. But then over time, if they didn't know how to be open and flow while that person is still fighting them off, they would burn out oftentimes, or make mistakes, or these beasts that would just be narrow focus. Now, no one knows what kind of focus they're in. So they might be open and narrowed, so we don't know. I'm just saying that explosive energy is reasonable. That's why we have objective narrowed focus. It's powerful. It's it's the most powerful energy we have in dealing with the crises. Problem is when we either get stuck in it, or we're using it with something that doesn't need the extraneous, superfluous stress response. And that's when we start to realize, I do. So I'm going to give you a challenge to think about next time you're at the gym. For those of you who work out, as soon as you get uncomfortable, knowing that you're becoming very narrowly focused on something outside you, or most likely inside you, pressure, tension, and the stress starts to build, and then your brain starts saying, I can't wait for this to be over, or I don't know if I could do more. And as soon as you do that, just start expanding your awareness past your body into the room. Become aware of the space through your body as you're breathing. Imagine the air as a conduit of space going right through your body, your emotions, the stress, and past your body. And just keep getting bigger and more diffuse while you continue to immerse and merge with patterns that you were separating from while diffusing at the same time. And you'll find your energy increase rather than decrease. Find yourself wanting to do more because you'll open the floodgates, because the brain can now be more efficient and the body can be more efficient because you're not burning as much energy as you were a minute ago. And then we won't have this intense charge to escape the problem. Stretching a hamstring, that's the analogy I like to use. And so here's the key. So just recently, I forced myself, or unconsciously put myself in a situation to feel intense emotions, really intense emotions, because I'm ready for more. And so my brain goes, all right, let's do that thing that's stupid, or let's talk to that person that way, or whatever it is, right? In order to bring up sensations that I've never processed, right? And it's okay. So it was really bad. Like, I looked at my heartbeat on my HRV machine, and my heartbeat was 120 beats per minute, baseline. It's like tachycardia, like that, without exercising. That's a problem, right? I'm feeling almost like I want to vomit. I'm feeling sick to my stomach. And I'm practicing what I'm teaching you and what we'll be doing in a moment here. And I keep doing it. Now, I'm doing it for 12 hours. So as I'm doing it, I'm like, this is the worst experience in the world. And yet I wanted more of it. And I said to myself, what can I tell a client or someone listening? What is the difference that's going to make the difference in this situation? And as I was going deeper and deeper, it was really like a whole bunch of warnings that I have to do something that I couldn't do. And I kept going deeper and deeper. And I realized, oh, that's the difference. Because anyone who doesn't know something about this, who just attempts to do this, might start to panic in doing this because they see it through the lens. Because I was realizing it. If I saw this through the lens of, when is this going to go away? It would have gotten worse and it would have felt worse because I'm going into narrowed objective focus. I'm saying, I don't want to merge with you. I want to run from you. I don't want to be one with you. And I don't want to notice anything else while you're there. I want to notice you. I want to be away from you and I wish you would go away. And I realized that's the difference that makes the difference. So, because I see it through this lens, I was able to share with you and to share with myself, oh, no, this is not about making something go away. This is about becoming the sky and merging with that which I thought was not me. So it can become me, that I now displace onto someone else outside me or an event outside me. No, that's all happening inside me. So as I started to immerse myself in the inner world, I started imagining the 4 events in my childhood that match it as if I was in the outer world. And I started even merging with my outer world as I was merging with my inner world and diffusing and breathing through the person and breathing through the emotion and becoming one to the point where I didn't know where the person ended and I began. So I was doing it basically to myself and I was the space around it happening. And it started to discharge. And by this morning, or I think by the afternoon, all the issues that were coming up, now I see them in a completely different light. I'm actually hopeful because of what I realized in the insights in their wake. But only because, really only because, I saw it as something that doesn't need to go away, but something that needs to become part of me as I get bigger and through it and integrate it rather than separate from it. And this happens in every area of our lives. That's how our brain knows whether to rewire, going back to the last talk, right? The brain knows when we're driving a car, the brain knows that we're driving a car and we're going to keep driving the car. And we don't expect the brain to automate that. We're going to drive the car. When the brain gets that message and we're driving it no matter what, and we're doing it no matter what, and we're not trying to get rid of driving car or wishing we weren't driving car, suddenly what happens? It's now delegated to the subconscious mind as automation. Now you drive a car, you're not even consciously aware of it, and it's like you have a genie driving your car, law of attraction, right? You now have a genie driving your car. You can drift for 20 minutes and still get home. Little to no activity in the brain to drive the car anymore. Alpha waves when you're driving. That's why you can go into trance. Unless you're going somewhere new, then you can't be automated anymore. You have to be thinking about your turns. That's why it's hard to listen to books on tape when you're driving somewhere new, because you can't be focusing on those two things consciously at the same time. But if you're going somewhere old, you can, the habitual, you can listen to a book on tape and get so wrapped into it, and then all of a sudden you're at your destination and you already know how you got there. So this is what happens when you tell the brain, we're doing this anyway. I don't want to get into this subject because it's another talk, but whenever I've created miracles, just cool miracles about watching my brain change through hypnosis, it was always every single time, even my knees, healing my knee, weird things that I won't get into in this talk, but weird things, every single time it changed, it was because I was being the change I wanted, no matter what was happening in the world, until my body and brain got used to me thinking that way, and then it automated it for me, or feeling that way, and it automated it for me. I didn't do something and hope it worked. That's what happens in hypnosis a lot, right? Someone will say, wow, that felt good, and I didn't eat that thing today, and that was really great. And then thinking that it's now automated. No, the automation has to keep going until it's automated. But we don't do it until, driving, you don't do it and hope you're one day driving. You just keep driving, and then all of a sudden you realize you're driving. This is the intensity of the change that needs to happen in the mind and body in order for change to happen. And once again, in pattern recognition from the emotion, going back to that stretch idea, anytime we don't like this feeling, we are connected to the pattern in our hippocampus that was in the world at one time because we're trying to master it. And we will attract it, look for it, or notice it, or worry about it in order to work out this emotion we never processed. If you diffuse and merge with the emotion, the person, the air, everything else, and then you are able to deal with your boundaries, then you're in flow with boundaries rather than thinking you're having a boundary or desire outside, but really the unfortunate boundary is inside. I'm not going to feel this experience as trying to process the outside. And I liken this to like, let's just say a person in the ring fighting. Everything has to be in flow. They have to be open to everything, flowing in everything. And from that, they have their boundaries of not hitting the ropes, going this way, moving their feet a certain way, right? Pivoting, getting that angle, whatever they're doing is the boundary, but it's from a place of oneness and flow and integration, not from a place of separation. So boundaries are important, but they have to be within the flow of our own energy processing the world. If not, what we think is a boundary outside is really a boundary within our own emotional system that's trying to process the outside. One example, a spouse or a partner's here, and I don't like the way they're treating me, and I think my boundary is stop it, which is a good boundary, stop it, I'm gonna leave. But if I'm saying stop it because I have a boundary in my own emotions I don't wanna feel, and I'm blaming them for the emotion rather than the behavior, then what happens is I'm carrying them with me to the next relationship. And either I'm gonna put up for it with it long enough until I say stop it and then leave, or just put up with it and say, why does this keep happening to me? Because the boundary that I shouldn't have is within myself. And the boundary I shouldn't have is within them. There should be no boundary so I can have a boundary. There has to be flow so then I can deal with the situation, like when someone's in flow, like a gymnast doing all these wonderful moves, but they have to be in flow and out of their own way, alpha waves, but they still got their boundaries. They're gonna move that way, they're gonna grab the thing this way. They're still doing things that are acceptable or not acceptable, but they're in flow with it rather than separate from it. And this is why people think, I think, that we have boundaries in relationships, because we say, no, we scream. Why not just say, no, we can't do that and leave? Why do I have to scream? Because I can't handle the hurt that someone I love would be talking to me that way. And I can't handle the fear of saying no and leaving because I'm going to leave because they're going to keep talking to me that way. I don't want to deal with that fear. I don't want to deal with the hurt. So I'm separated from that inside myself. And I think I'm having a boundary. The boundary, unfortunately, is here, and I'm saying no to when I should be integrating that. So then I know what to do with out there, and even diffuse out there and merge with out there and keep a boundary. This is where we get in trouble, I find. This is my point of view. You don't have to take it. But it's interesting. It's pretty profound in understanding the objective, narrowed focus. So let me share with you why I do this to begin with, and why, even though I found that visualizing what you want, being the state of what you want, is the best way to tell your brain how to create it. If you have all these objective emotional charges that are narrowed and objective inside our system, and they're responsible for moments we haven't mastered, how are we going to move towards that if these are time bombs waiting to go off? Rejection, betrayal, someone angry at us, failure, frustration, discomfort, physical emotion. How are we going to move towards our goal if we can't even handle the emotion in our body trying to process the challenge? And this is the irony of the woo-woo. That's why my logo is, whatever you want to call it, underneath my website is from the practical to the magical, because in this very practical way of looking at it, I created this magical event, which is winning the lottery when I was a kid, right? It was only 5,000, but I'm 57, 19 years old. That's like 35,000, right, today. And blue collar kid, parents never gave me $1 for anything. They paid for my school and food, but that's it. Never gave me $1. That's terrifying when you owe loan shark money. Do you think that money's gonna fall out of the air? And how did I align with the behavior that allowed that fortuitous event to show up kind of magically, I have to say, with synchronicities and happenstance, right? How did that happen? Simply this: I became one with everything. I diffused and immersed myself in everything I was separating from that was really an external result that was in my mind. I was afraid of being humiliated or beaten up. I was afraid of the emotions of that. I was afraid of that experience. I saw that as separate from me, that I didn't want. I saw the lottery balls as separate from me, of something I wanted. I saw the car that was totaled. I saw the car I wanted. And as soon as I became one with everything, And I mean, not only one with it, but the space underneath it, the emotions around it, where I literally became the guy hurting me. So I was hurting myself. I became the people, grabbing the balls in the lottery, the Pick 4 Lotto in New York, right? I became them. I became the car. Then I was without wanting anything, because I just immersed myself in everything. But in order to do that, I had to merge with everything I separated from, which are emotional responses around life and its horrible experiences that can happen, right? Does that mean that after I was there, if someone wanted to hurt me, I wouldn't fight back and I'd be okay with it? No, of course not. In fact, I'd probably be best to handle it in that state. Now, this is not like saying I'm okay with the situation. I just stopped separating from my body's emotional response to the situation and become one with what I thought was separate from me. I became one with everything. And in that moment, guess what also was there? Me having the car I wanted with $5,000. That's also what was there in my nervous system. So it wasn't like I had this because I was denying that. It's just like I am everything. I'm just putting my focus on something within the everything and enjoying that, but yet being everything else. No separation from anything. And that feeling moved me down the street into a store where a woman happened to be there at that time, who told me the numbers, who, if I would have been 10 seconds later, I would have met her. If I wasn't in this state, I wouldn't have walked down the street. And the state was a result of complete oneness with everything, every feeling, and the space underneath everything. And now I'm realizing when I look back, that's exactly what happened. I wasn't in flow. It's really cool. This is why I think when people finally let go, things happen. Where the adage, let go, let God comes from. But some people misunderstand it. They think it means that you're okay with everything. Or you're just not saying no to everything because you're becoming one with everything and you're working within everything. And so, how do you identify it? All you have to really do is think about the experience you would like to have that you're not having right now. Money, relationship, freedom, wanting kindness, quality, opportunity, appreciation. So think about the thing that you crave. It's in the craving is the narrow focus around the opposite of having that thing. You can do this with cravings, by the way, with food too. You do this, any wanting is a result of some narrowed objective focus. When I say wanting, like I have to have it, and I'm uncomfortable once I get it. Nothing wrong with that. There's a place and time for that kind of energy. But I'm saying most of us are in it when we don't have a solution and it's just suffering, right? So anytime you think about something, you recognize the reason you're in a wanting, a craving, a hoping is because there's an uncomfortable feeling in the body. Yes? That uncomfortable feeling in the body you don't like. Yes? That's why you want the change. You think the change will get rid of the uncomfortable feeling. So if you don't like something and you don't want it, and you think the external world is triggering it, which has some truth in it, but not all truth, you now objectify and separate and narrow around the emotion in your body that you think the external world is triggering. Right? This is what I had to do with my wife, and it was magic. It changed my life. So these sensations, as soon as they come up, make the assumption that the sensations you're feeling is your body having intense emotions trying to learn what to do with this situation. And as I spoke about in other sessions, you can't run or fight. And that's why, and it was so intense at that time that you didn't know what to do with it. So you dissociated from it. And then you went up into whatever, dissociation, stimulation. It's really intense. You dissociated from it. And what you want to do now is start to diffuse and merge. That's what Les Femi realized years ago. And all of us have realized that sometimes with heat. I used to do it as a child. I used to put cigarettes out of my hand because I wanted to see what would happen if I became one with the heat and the pain and go into it, just like a muscle stretch. I want to see how much I can become one with the pain in my hand at that time, just to challenge the nature of open focus. I didn't realize it at the time. Probably some coping mechanism like cutting, but I was also seeing it as a way to see like what's happening here with the nature of pain. Like how do I change how I focus that will change the nature of the pain? And that's exactly what happened. I was able to, I still have scars on my hand. I was able to watch a cigarette burn my hand until it started blistering without stopping it because I had to become one with it. And then at one point I got too much to handle. But it was much more than when I first did it. I was like, why? Because I was diffusing. I was creating alpha waves. I was merging. I was activating a different hemisphere that says we're okay with this. We're one with this energy. That's it. Doesn't mean I was okay with the cigarette. Talk about the emotional response to the cigarette. So what you want to do is start to do that. Now, if you have a person involved in this experience that you don't like, that's rejecting you, criticizing you, in your way, or someone you hate, or someone you're annoyed at, if you see them as the shadow self that lives inside of us that we don't want to accept inside of ourselves, and you start to kind of merge with them within yourself, and you start to merge with them outside yourself, meaning you're getting diffused and you're merging with the experience, so it's nothing separate from you. Then you will find that weird things happen in the external world because you're no longer the limbic countertransference to their triggers in relationships. You just find that because you won't be responding to their need for you to respond unconsciously and reject them or betray them, whatever it is that the pattern is based on, because you have dissolved that feeling. It's like the relationship group I did, I think it was last week, on the 4 things you need to do in a relationship. It's the same kind of thing. You can't do these 4 things unless you do this. And this is accept that you can't control it. Someone is going to hold on to hurt no matter how much you apologize, or someone's going to hold on to shame no matter how much you ask for an apology. You know what I mean? So this is what I'm going to invite you to do. But let's start simply by just, everyone look at me if you can right now. As you're looking at me, become aware that you're narrowly focusing, right? It's narrowed, it's objective. There's a tightening maybe in the body. Yeah. Now, notice the space between us. Can you imagine and the volume of space between you and the computer and me? And can you start to expand, almost as if your air, your breath, is the conduit of space. It's going in your body, but also passing your body and going through the screen and going to my body and past my body. And then coming back and going past your body. And as you expand, you're going into the room. And you're now becoming diffused. Continue to diffuse your attention. And just keep diffusing. Now, every time you diffuse, you're going into what? Alpha waves. Every time you start to go into alpha waves, guess what the body does? Hey, down here on these low frequencies, you got all this energy in your body, and you'll feel a tightening happen. That's the opportunity to stay here, diffused. And now, just like you did with me, or the computer screen, or the room, you could do it with the emotion and the sensations in your body. So become aware of breathing right through the emotion, the space underneath it and around it, or the pain. Going through it and expanding out at the same time. Now, when the body goes, oh, that's really painful, say, I know, but if it's too painful, you get too narrow focused and objective. So diffuse yourself a little bit more, just like a stretch, until you could kind of be aware of the edges of that pain. And then be aware of that energy and become aware of the space underneath the pain and through the pain, beyond the pain, behind the pain, behind your back and out of your body. And keep doing that, knowing that what you're doing is learning to discharge something by integrating it back into you rather than always pushing it out. And keep going. Notice as soon as you feel any tightening, the chest, throat, or stomach, you've now narrowed focus on an emotion that has a thought, that has a warning. Let that warning, thought, or idea come to the surface. Diffuse your awareness and see if you can start to merge with it. If this is really intense, it just means you have a lot of intense energy there. So then just stay at the edges of it. But make sure you're expanding and diffusing if you're merging with it. In fact, the more you diffuse, the easier it is to merge. The more you stay at the edges, the easier it is to stay at the edges. And the longer you stay at the edges, the more you start going deeper into it to explore. Yes, it's intense. It's you. It's our narrowed objective focus on it that's the problem, not the emotion itself. And keep going through it and breathe. You can even pendulate through it, like breathing right through it, like your space going right through your body and going the other way. And when your brain's going, yeah, but this is not supposed to be, say, oh, it is. I'm just becoming aware of something bigger while it's being. It knows its own path. It has its own way of healing. Keep breathing. Keep going through it. Now, if there's a person in your life or a situation that's out of reach, that's creating this problem, Now imagine they're in front of you, and give yourself permission to imagine the part of you that represents that person, a parent, a teacher, it doesn't matter, sibling. And imagine now they're really in front of you. And now do the same thing. Start to become aware of the volume of space between you and them. And as you breathe, feel your breath as a conduit going through your space in your body, through the space between you, into their body, past their body, beyond their body, diffusing out beyond all areas of their body. As you breathe in, feel it moving right through their body, through the space between your body, through your body and behind you. See and feel the emotions moving through this space, maintaining the space and the awareness as the central focal point, as everything that moves moves, expanding into that person, through the person. You may even want to shrink the space, merge with them. Feel the energy dispersing, merging, going right through it. And keep doing that until you start to feel that there's no other, whether it be the thing you want, the thing that's in your way, until you don't feel there's an other. And you do that by continuing to disperse, diffuse, and immerse, meaning merge, into what's there until everything is you, and then you have conscious choice to just choose within all that is. To put your awareness and merge with that. That's a merging of choice. That's being enveloped in a focus of choice. And that can melt into the bigger you. That can dissolve into all of you. And every time you do that, you feel pressure building. Scan your body. See if there's any pressure, realizing that there's a thought, an emotion, or a situation in your body right there. Become aware that the problem was separating from it and putting your focus on it. So diffuse your focus, notice the space around the emotion. Go further out. Notice the space in between the emotion, or under the emotion, or through the emotion. Feel yourself moving right through it. Noticing that this energy, when left alone, has its own life, and it's trying to help you. Let it discharge. It can fight when it needs to. It can communicate when it needs to. It can attract something when it needs to. It's not for us to get rid of. It's for us to be aware of it without judgment. It's the mindfulness part of this. Just observing and merging with it without any judgment. Because what is judgment? Is separation. What is merging with it? Curiosity, feeling it. But make sure you're diffusing and slowly going into it. And feeling the space underneath it. And through it. And around it. Now, the interesting thing is when you've dissolved everything, because you've merged with everything, because you've diffused your awareness through and around everything, then from the field of possibilities, you get to now create something that's narrowed and objective by noticing what's there that's separate from you, that's possible. As you start to focus on that, you start focusing on that, and the body is processing everything else. Guess what happens to that thing? It starts to become more you start to immerse yourself in it. As you're immersing yourself in this narrow focus, everything that's in conflict with this, every memory or belief is going to come to the surface and keep expanding and merging with all that, so nothing is left. And now become one with this, as this now diffuses around the edges into everything. So this becomes the dominant state of all that is. Notice, scan your body, as a client told me today and gave me permission. They said, I did it exercising, it was amazing. I was feeling frustrated and I expanded. So let me show you in a real-time example of how profound this is. And she gave me permission to talk about this. So I'm working with a client with nail biting. And we're doing swish patterns, and whenever swish pattern doesn't work, it's either the desire to not bite the nails is not strong enough, or there's an intense emotional charge that they're using the nails to cope with, like any kind of compulsion, right? So every time, instead of focusing on the coping, we focus on what happens when she doesn't bite her nails, and what she's forced to feel, right? And we're doing this, not so much this direct open focus, but this kind of mindfulness, getting the root of the pattern that's creating a stress response that they've got narrow focus around, they never process. So when it comes up, they have to bite their nails. When it's triggered, they have to bite their nails. And the person who's very calm doesn't have any anxiety. They just bite their nails. No anxiety, but they're biting their nails. Doesn't that seem like a contradiction? I have no anxiety. I can't stop biting my nails. I just love it. It sounds like anxiety, but it doesn't feel like anxiety, right? And sure enough, we kept going. And then we hit the presenting issue, which was the emotion coming up. And we released, discharged the emotion. Doing a version of this, but this is a very powerful way to do it within whatever intervention you're doing. You can use it with everything. And then I get a call that they had never bit their nails more than they were biting. Like they couldn't stop. What does that tell you? The stuff that she's running from is finally there because she doesn't want it to come up. Make sense? She knows this work. She's been doing levels at her rate, the way she wants to do it now. And sure enough, she comes in, and then we find the root under that, and she's saying, I've never been anxious my whole life. Now I'm anxious. It's like, you've never been anxious. So this is an example of what I'm talking about. So separated from the sensations of anxiety in her body because of a humiliation or embarrassment, that they put themselves in a situation that they actually had to do the very thing that was going to possibly create that same pattern of embarrassment that they never processed and separated from when they were 6 or something. And they pushed it down so far that this became a great coping. So they didn't even have to feel, so they didn't even feel anxious. Because they were so separated from their body, they didn't know to feel anxious. Now the anxiety is up because what's coming to surface is finally coming up. And then we found the root of that pattern right there. It's right there. Discharge, anxiety gone. The situation they're about to do that was the genesis of their problem, the emotion they were feeling, that the same pattern exists, they're excited to do it now. And the biting, very rare the past couple of days when it was, as high as it can be. And now we can do it like what's called a switch pattern on that, because now it's a habitual pattern because the emotion that they were coping with is gone. Now we can shift and do different, better coping, or just a habit change. There's no reason to do it anymore other than I feel a little uncomfortable, I'm going to do it. It's not that, you're not that uncomfortable. And so this is what happens when we go, no. And what I like to do is find it in any compulsion, any impulsivity, any compulsivity, any addiction, anything that tells me what to do. I didn't catch myself earlier because of the stress was coming up, and I found myself eating popcorn so fast between sessions that it was really clearly unconscious. I couldn't catch it there. I was too in it. I was too in narrowed focus, running from the tiger in my own body to even know I was running from a tiger, right? But yesterday or whatever it was when this stuff was coming up, there's a bag of Trader Joe's chocolate blueberries, so it's good for you. Dark chocolate, blueberries. It's got a halo on it, right? And I found myself reaching for it and starting to eat it. And I stopped and I said, okay, what would I tell a client who's doing weight loss right now or addiction right now, where they're actually in the process of doing it? I felt myself really suffering if I was to stop it. I really felt suffering like there's no way in hell. And that's what happens when you're in a craving. Dopamine rewards you for thinking about it. It rewards you when you eat it. And if you don't listen to it, it creates stress hormones, really intense stress hormones. Now, if it's in a coping on top of it, the stress hormones are created by the emotion coming up that was narrow focus on top of it. You follow? And then if you don't eat it, then also it creates irritability because your blood sugar level dropped a little bit because there's preparing to eat some sugar. So now it's like, whoa, you're supposed to replenish it. And now it just feels like impossible to give up that cake because it's already in motion, right? The irritability of the blood sugar dropping, the dopamine of hope of not only filling up that blood sugar, but releasing the discomfort you're feeling in the body that got triggered for whatever reason. It could be just, again, a lot of objective narrow focus that just built and I just need something to relax. And my brain said, oh, get out of that by going to dopamine and get out of that by forcing yourself to digest food and slow down. And so right before I did it, I said, I'm going to do it. I promise. It's just 10 seconds. I have 10 seconds. And so my brain left me alone just for 10 seconds because I promised I was going to do it. And I stopped and I realized, where's all my focus, narrowed and objective, on that and running from this. So I became aware of it. And I just started breathing through the energy and going right through the food too, right through it. And then started to go underneath the pattern and diffusing and merging and merging and diffusing and merging. It only took about, I don't know, a minute. And then I walked out, and on the way out, I said, did I eat that? I don't even remember eating it, and I didn't. I realized I didn't even eat it. I didn't need to. I got the same result as if I ate it, which is a discharge of the narrowed focus energy. But it wasn't a discharge. It was escape out of it by eating that dopamine-ridden, triggering food. So instead of escaping out of it, I escaped through it and discharged it in that moment. And this is what I mean by anytime you're uncomfortable, it's an experience of narrow objective focus, and sometimes that's what you need. You're uncomfortable. You get 20 people running after you with a baseball bat. You should run for the hills. You should be uncomfortable and you should have narrowed objective focus, but as soon as you're out of harm's way, you have to go back into diffused. And so by feeling things fully, by discharging things, by being okay with those things, by diffusing, that's why we shake and cry and shake. It's the nervous system going back into balance. It wasn't the problem, it was the body processing the body's response to a problem. And as soon as we judge that and have narrowed objective focus, we're literally stopping the body from learning how to deal with the external world. And that's why we get stuck in these limiting loops of repetition compulsion, as Freud talked about, and Jung even mentioned. So if, in order to get to the pattern, you want to start with identifying the emotion and what's bothering you, that's fine, because it'll get you deeper into the focal point of that trapped energy. For example, I don't know how I'm feeling, I'm just annoyed. Well, you're gonna discharge annoyance with that, right? So what are you annoyed at specifically? What are you afraid of specifically? My bills, I don't have bills, I just got fired, I don't have money, that kind of thing. Okay, I'm panicked. Okay, great, so you're panicked, not great, but you panicked. Okay, what is that? Where is that? Okay, here. Is there a solution right now? I don't know, I can't think, or I can't. Okay, great. So that's the problem. So you're afraid of some sensation rather than the experience. Your brain is saying that experience that could happen or might happen, you never learned to know what to do with it, so the brain is sending an alarm off to fight flight. So okay, now we got the charge. So now I'm going to be present with my body shaking when there's no response, because that's why my body shakes. It's trying to have a response, and if I can't run a fight, it goes, what do I do? And it starts to shake. When it starts to shake, the energy starts to disperse, and then the blood flow will start going into the frontal lobes, because you're starting to relax, and frontal lobes is how you change a situation without fighting or running. Then you have patience, communication, action, new ways of doing things, inventions, synchronicities, insights, flow. All these weird things happen when you're in that state. So that's why I like to combine the two, which is I like to ask myself those patterns. Do I need, and that's in another talk, and you can look that up when I post it, but in a nutshell, like, do I need to fight or run to deal with this right this second? First question. Okay, good. No. Okay, so this energy is kind of useless. So I can't be dealing with this with all this fight-flight chemistry, because I'm not accepting something I can't control. If I can control it, I want to punch it or run. If I can't control it by punching or running, or I can't control it at all, it's useless. So then you have to go into the second question. So what do I need to accept? I have no control over right now to do any force with, to change. Some people don't like me. it sucks. I want to change it. I'm going to change it, but I have to first accept it so I can be relaxed and start using my relaxed frontal lobes and change brain rather than reactive fight flight brain, which is autonomic nervous system just doing its primitive stuff, right? Okay, what do I need to do to change it? Well, wait, I accepted that I can't control it. It sucks. Well, if it sucks, then I must have something juxtaposed with it to know it sucks. Meaning, if you're being rude to me and I feel emotion and I can't fight or run and I accept it and it still sucks, then why does it suck? Because it's in contrast with what I would like. Well, then I have to know what I would like. I'd have to get a sense of that and tune into that, or I wouldn't have an emotion. And so I'd have to kind of get an idea of you going, oh, I love you, man, or we're friends, or everything's cool, and love that while my body's shaking because you're not doing that. But I can't run a fight, so the shaking needs to go up now and discharge and go now into my brain. And that's when you ask that question, what can I do to change this? If anything, to get closer to this image I already have that I like. Sometimes it's patience, sometimes it's listening, sometimes it's reflective listening, sometimes it's, I'm so sorry my behavior said that to you, did that to you, what can I do? Whatever it is. And then what can I learn from this situation so I don't keep winding up in these situations? Don't try to rescue everyone, or don't try to apologize more than you need to, or don't try to, whatever. Accept that some people are not capable of apologizing or accepting your apology. They're filled with their own trauma. Next, then note to self, when I see that next time, don't fall into that trap and just go, okay, good, and then you get closer to what you would like. Because that's why we have these ruptures, because life doesn't match what we want. That's what Jung talked about as far as the archetype, is like the anima is the perfect anima. When our parents don't act like the anima, there's a rupture. And then that parent fills in the anima, our archetype of the perfect feminine is someone who's always scolding us or pushing away or, God forbid, abusing us. And we're cold to us, and that's our problem, is that's how we see our world, when the only reason we have a problem is because there's a part of us that is not that we know is real love and pure kindness and love, and this is not matching it. And so we're processing, accepting that some people have trauma, or not capable, or mentally ill, or filled with stress hormones, and then it sucks, but now we can start visualizing that for ourselves and attract friends, or maybe behave differently. Mom might change a little bit, who knows? But the point is, we discharge it because we learn it's a serenity prayer, right? We accept what we can't control, do what we can do to get what we want, and open focus the hell out of it. So whenever you're in a stress response around anything, ask yourself, where is my focus going to? Am I narrowing my focus? Is it outside? If it's outside, it's oftentimes inside. If it's only outside, then it probably is a problem we should deal with. But if something's triggering a stress response inside, are you narrow and objectifying your own sensation and memories or thoughts or possibilities? Okay, great. Rather than do what we normally do, we have to lead into how diffuse first, be on the edges, read through it, and realizing the emotion was trying to give us a solution. It wasn't the problem. It was our body's resourcing to deal with the problem. And it's figuring it out. Do I run, fight? No, can't do that. Well, do we have empathy? Okay, do we need to realize that this person's not capable? Okay, great. Do we need to really be more kind to that person first before we keep a boundary? Great. Do we need to take responsibility for our emotion and still ask for a change in their behavior? I know that's my thing, but would you mind? I know it's my thing. What do we need to do to change it? And you will find it, because if we went to the moon, if we built skyscrapers, if we turned petroleum into plastic, and medicine and fuel, we can achieve our intentions. And when we're vulnerable before the age of 8, in utero, that emotion that was too intense to feel is going to be there. And it's going to force us into narrowed objective focus. So our job is to keep telling the nervous system, oh no, we're going to stand down and diffuse and merge rather than react. And you see that that's the solution, not what your brain is telling you the solution is, unless there's a real solution. Calling someone 100 times is not the solution. That's what your brain will tell you, right? Call them 100, just keep calling them. You'll get things done that way, but we'll keep lying to that person about everything. Just lie, omit everything, and they won't be mad at you, really. But if you start to become comfortable with people's anger, disappointment, sadness, or other people's inability to apologize, care about your concerns, then you know now what to do with it physically, because it still doesn't match what you would like. You just don't have extraneous or superfluous stress hormones to do. I will sum it up by saying diffuse, merge, diffuse, merge, diffuse, merge. And in all that, you can also start to merge with, this is knowing your outcome, the state of being, and the thing you would like, as long as you keep merging with and diffusing into and through the things you never processed. So the body can move towards what it is you like, because it now knows how to deal with the things you do. So no, you don't always have to know, but you'll wind up knowing, because every trapped emotion has its own association. So as you start feeling something, you'll start having memories, because the memory is right there in the feeling. That's why we don't have the memory of the emotion, because we're separated from the emotion. I can't tell you how many times I said, just be with the emotion for a second. Just be there, open the door, breathe through it, be okay with this emotion of sadness. Okay, well, what's the first time you felt this? I don't know. Okay, just know that you're there now, because you'd have to be, if you're feeling this, I'm 7. This was when I was outside in my yard and my family was laughing at me. There you go. You did this, now let's do this. Let's not give it meaning, let's give it intention. Give it understanding and intention rather than meaning. The only meaning we're going to give it is if it doesn't match what you would have liked. That means you'd have to know what you would like. Oh, that would have to feel good too, while all this other stuff is there. You see, now you're diffusing, noticing what you would like as well as noticing what you don't like, noticing the emotions you don't like while noticing the emotions of what you would like. And this giant open gestalt of energy soup, when we're out of the way, does everything for us. And that's why they say, let go, let God, or trust, get out of the way. And I'll leave you on one more note. They studied people, archers, and I think golfers too. And they did brain scans, they had EEG on them. And they noticed that when professional archers that hit the mark, right before they were looking at their external world in separate beta waves, and they're processing the speed, the air, the distance, right, lining it up. But right before they let go, right before they had a flood of alpha waves, meaning they became everything. They became the distance between it. They no longer existed. Everything was happening for itself. So they became the universe doing archery. So they no longer involved with intention or processing. They got out of the way, let the body do it. The ones who didn't, they stayed in beta waves. So trying, even as you do this process, start with saying, can I allow myself, as Les Femi said in his book or recording somewhere, he said, can you allow this process to be effortless, without effort? Who knew? Without trying. And you just notice the space without trying. Can you allow this to be effortless? Just notice the room, the space around you. Can you notice the space between the emotion and under the emotion and around the emotion? Through your body and past your body into the other person's body. Can you notice that space? Can you notice and diffuse? Can you merge with that while noticing the space? Because you go from a pattern recognition being to the authentic self. Remember that. You go from pattern recognition to authentic. You go from a primitive brain trying to survive through patterns to the real self. Why? Because when the reptilian brain is designed to stay alive, that is the reason for the autonomic nervous system, fight, flight, right? When it feels completely safe, because it's discharged everything, it's not running from everything, so the world is safe, and that means the body's safe. Guess what gets to play? The mammalian adaptation. What is that? Play and connection. So now I can connect and my body's comfortable and relaxed. I'm not trying to protect something or run from something. I can now play and connect and learn how to connect through play and learn how to learn through play. Cool. If that's comfortable, guess what else also gets to kick in now? The human brain. What's the human brain? I can visualize something, a skyscraper, world peace, and start to create that through intention. But if I'm trapped in here, how am I going to let my mammalian brain or my human brain play? It's using me, my mammalian brain, and my human brain rather than me using it, because I've separated from it rather than integrated it. That's the whole idea of Freud and Jung, right? One is repression, separation. The other one was integration of all parts. It's the same thing. When you say no to something, you create parts that want something and are filled with stress hormones. If you repress something, that wish needs to come out somehow. Headaches, nightmares, behaviors, sublimation. So that's how it starts to happen. So when you integrate and you continue to welcome everything that's been repressed and integrate everything that's been separated from, then the higher actualization part of our beings can show up. And then we become those masters of a body, brain, and the human condition rather than be trapped by it. All right. I'm going to go. I think that was enough. It's really one of the missing components to the law of attraction and just dealing with emotions is understanding by forcing yourself into, guiding yourself into effortlessly, diffuse, immerse, focus. You can still be focusing, but you can diffuse at the same time. You can still be objective, but you can immerse yourself at the same time. Too much objectivity, you're a sociopath or a psychopath. Too much immersement sometimes, you're too much of an empath, or I'd call it codependency or martyr. But if you're able to come in and out of these states at will, when I need to be a sociopath, I become a surgeon and separate and be objective. Or if I need to connect with my lover, I become immersed. I need to expand around something while narrowing my focus, great, I create some open focus within my narrowed focus. If I need 100% narrowed focus and objective, then I'm fighting for my life. And when that's over, I need to diffuse again and disperse and immerse. Okay? All right. Yay! I love you, buddy.
Love you too, Dad. I think it's a little late, so I don't think I'm gonna come over tonight. It's already 9.
Wow. You hurt me. You hurt me deep inside.
Up and focus.